So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to our invoicing hours. Today, again, we have Vlad and Camille joining the session to clarify everything about electronic invoicing. In that the legislation probably is coming out soon. We keep saying every week the same, but there are some updates from the Ministry of Finance as well that they are doing at the moment. So it keeps a little bit delayed on the legislation. But Vlad, can you introduce yourself and Camille as well, please?
Thank you, Diana. My name is Vlad Skibunov, and I'm VAT partner with Dhruva Consultants. While invoicing is obviously a tax technology project, it directly impacts VAT. Therefore, all our clients are interested in the topic, how it will impact VAT compliance, how it will impact VAT processes, and therefore we hope to share any insights we have with you as well. Camille?
Hello, everyone. My name is Camille. I'm the CTO at Oxinus Holdings. We're one of the providers of an e-invoicing solution at the last stage of accreditation with the ministry. We're here to support all the businesses in the UAE and beyond as well, because we already operate in Europe in terms of the technology and integrations. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. And the reason why Dhruva and Oxinus, we are with Oxinus in this event and weekly sessions is because Oxinus is our service invoicing provider, and our partnership with them is extended to the UAE, and we are confident that we are going to certify one of the first certified in the UAE, and we are in the process. So one of the questions, feel free to type any questions that you might have as well, so we are able to answer them. We have received some questions through the email to our email invoicing, UAE invoicing office hours. And one of the recurring questions is about the identification of businesses for electronic invoicing. What happened? What is the identification for legal entities for electronic invoicing? As per the Ministry of Finance, the identification is the tax identification number, which is the 10 digits of the VAT registration number or corporate tax. The Ministry of Finance clarified that in case the legal entity is not registered for VAT, so they need to use the tax identification number for corporate tax. And then what the next question would be, what happened with the tax registration number for VAT purpose? So then the tax registration number can be used as a reference in the invoice. So in this way, the electronic invoice has the tax registration number for VAT and as a reference in the invoice and will be valid for VAT purpose. So this is currently the approach that they have for identification in the electronic invoicing. Every single entity. Do you have any insights on this, Camille? Would you want to comment?
No, I've got some other questions, but let's finish the subject first. We'll go to some other questions that I got.
Okay. So, and in terms of what's happening for VAT group, and every single entity should have their own endpoint? And the answer is yes. Every single entity will be on board into the electronic invoicing system using each of the single entity their own endpoint. It means they need to be onboarded separately. In this case, because the VAT registration number, the TIN number would be for the entire entity, for the entire VAT group. So it's expected that the tax registration, the TIN number that for onboarding for VAT groups would be the corporate tax registration. And again, this is something that is expected to be published in the legislation, but as of now, this is the current approach that the Ministry of Finance is having, as we are having this discussion with them because we are the service providers. So every tax identification number will be verified on Emera Tax Portal while the onboarding process is happening. So this will be at the beginning of the process to connect the business with the service provider and Emera Tax.
which is quite interesting, I find, Diana, because obviously it's a bit different from the current system when you're issuing a tax invoice to a tax group, there will only be TRN for VAT purposes, because you don't need to issue it to individual company, you just issue it to the group as a whole. But with the introduction of invoicing, where each entity has a separate endpoint, you do need to be able to identify to which entity you're issuing. And therefore, Ministry of Finance seems to go this roundabout way to require you to use both corporate tax identification plus VAT TRN. Okay.
Yes. So, and this is where we discuss as well in the past sessions that invoicing is not only for a VAT, but of course, don't forget to include the tax registration number for VAT purpose in your invoice as a reference. This is the approach that we are taking now for the invoice to be valid for VAT purpose. So, Kamil?
So I had two questions I received. First question was about
sorry to interrupt for people who haven't been to the sessions yet. The purpose of today is not just for us to present, but for you to ask questions, which we'll attempt to answer. So please feel free to type any questions you have.
Yes. So one of the questions I got is, will the e-invoice support extra documents like delivery notes or timesheets? So yes, the answer to that is that attachments can be sent as a supportive document in the e-invoice. But obviously the XML format is the official record for the validation and totals. These are just additional documents that can be attached. There is one more question. What if the buyer isn't on PEPL yet? Well, that's a good question. So the seller still needs to send invoice via accredited provider and fulfill the reporting. And delivery can happen in a traditional way. So that invoice can be sent by email, for example. But obviously, as more endpoints go live, then invoices will be directly delivered through PEPL network. One other question I got this week is for the self-billing invoices. UAE model will support self-billing invoices. So what is a self-billing invoice? It is an invoice that is created by the buyer and sent to supplier instead. So PEPL network supports this kind of invoices, and a lot of ERP systems on the market will also support these kind of invoices. You will be able to issue e-invoices in this format as well.
And I think, Camilo, there is more questions around the time frame to exchange the MLS and tax data document. So I think we can we can just refresh about this. What is the timeline for service provider to send the response to the Ministry of Finance, and for the different corners 2 and 3 to send the response back for acknowledgement. So I think we can refresh that as well, that we have a lot of questions on the time frame, if there is any rejection allowed in the invoicing platform or system.
Yes. Generally, in terms of the timing, that's not something that people should be worried, because it pertains mostly to the PEPL network itself. Let's start with the rejections. Invoice cannot be rejected, so invoices are automatically accepted, and the date of the invoice was sent is considered the date of the invoice. Cancellation, any amendments, they can happen via credit notes or any other documents, but they cannot be rejected by the buyer using the PEPL network. Through the accredited service provider, invoices sent almost real time to the network, but the network has around 10 minutes to send confirmation to the government, and this communication happens in parallel from the corner 2 and corner 3. So they both send responses to the government in parallel, and both are required for the full transaction to be complete.
So in terms of the attachment that you talked earlier as well, according to the latest service SLAs, so this attachment for the UAE for the PayPal network is up to 100 megabytes. And there's a lot of questions that we have from clients as well about the attachment for purchase order, for example. So this is possible, but it needs to be agreed with the service provider.
Yes.
Yes, I think this question is it possible to amend the invoices in the same month or before filing VAT returns? Vlad? You are on mute.
Thank you. So I'm guessing this question relates to what's currently can happen in terms of the VAT when a person can issue a tax invoice, and if they, let's say, decide it's not should not have been issued, they can credit noted, and it doesn't need to be reported in the VAT return, assuming all of this has happened before the VAT return had to be filed. Going forward, it should be possible to do the same, but the difference is that once you issue a tax invoice using PayPal network, it will automatically be delivered to the FTA. So the FTA will already have a record of it. Then you should be, after that, you should be able to issue a credit note reversing the tax invoice, which again will be received by the FTA. But if you do that, then technically you do not need to report it in that tax period, assuming it's still within the same tax period.
There were some questions as well about what happened if we need to submit VAT returns after electronic invoicing implementation. And yes, the process of filing is not going to change immediately, maybe in the future. So this is something that we need to have in mind. The process will be the same. The filing, maybe with the electronic invoicing evolves, in the future, we can have an automatic filing of the VAT, of tax returns, especially VAT. So, Camille, any more questions?
Yeah, I got a question about the systems. Which systems are ready for UAE invoicing? Well, no ERP system is compliant on its own at the moment. So UAE requires using accredited service provider to validate, transform the invoice to print AE format and exchange over a PayPal network, and also for the reporting of the tax data. So systems like SAP, Oracle Dynamics, NetSuite, Odoo, they can work with invoicing, but they require integration with accredited service provider. That's the situation at the moment. We also spoke about it last week when we had our guest Phil. He was sharing more information about the whole accreditation process. It's not something that is easy. It's a multi-step process. Requires fulfilling a lot of rules and compliance. Plus, there is a quite extensive development process. So it takes some time at the moment. There is no official list of accredited service providers, and as far as we are concerned, there is a few companies that are at the last stage. Us, with Verimbo being one of the companies that are almost done with the procedure, and the full list will be published by the ministry shortly.
How many service providers, accredited service providers, do you expect there to be in the UAE?
To be honest, I don't have this information. Probably, usually there is 4 or 5 major companies. Like I said, it's a lengthy process. So to become accredited service provider, it's not easy. Even if you already have a solution, or for example, you have an ERP solution, it's a big time investment, mostly to go through the whole accreditation process, make necessary changes, and also fulfill the requirements, because here we are dealing with very sensitive documents. One of the requirements that we're fulfilling as Verinfo is sovereignty. So we're hosting all of our systems within UAE on a private cloud, and that's something also very, very important.
I would like to add something here as well, that because in the PayPal conference as well, I heard like, it's easy, I'm operating in the UAE, I already have a service provider in Europe. So, but this is not enough, because the service provider must be established in the UAE for the past 2 years. And this is something that a lot of companies from a service provider in Europe are struggling to get into this market because of this specific requirement. So the requirements that you mentioned, Camille, are very strict and specific, and companies who are operating in other jurisdictions and operate here, the operations here maybe are small, so they can say, I will use from Europe, but this is not the case. So that's the reason the invoicing service provider in the UAE, we are expecting to be limited, because this Ministry of Finance is performing testing as well, and already has to be certified by the PayPal authority. So it's not like other markets like KSA, that there are hundreds and hundreds of invoicing service providers, because here has been more strict with the requirements, and actually the process is a little bit more expensive as well. So this is to have in mind, that don't get like, we will have another service provider. You have to use the one who are listed. And actually, all businesses, when they are onboarding on this for the service provider, they need to go to Emiratax, log into the Emiratax, and in Emiratax they will appear the service provider, the list of the service provider, and you can select what is your service provider that you agreed, you have the contract, and you can send them your tax identification number, and the onboarding process will start from there. So this is very strict process for the UAE.
Yes. And here it's important to mention that, service provider is not just someone who connects you to the network, right? The role of the service provider is very important. It starts with the data validation, which, the whole purpose of invoicing is to structure the data somehow. We all know that nowadays companies, they use all kind of formats, they include different fields, and it's very tough. So the whole purpose of invoicing is to bring a certain standard, and the first role of the accredited service provider is to validate the data and transform it to make sure that it follows certain rules and guidelines. But on top of that, accredited service provider will look up the buyer endpoint, send the invoice to the buyer's provider, submit the tax data to the authority in parallel. Also, it needs to send acknowledgements, which is something called MLS, back to the ERP systems. And it also manages retrying, because in case there is a connectivity issue with government system or with recipient system, it's the accredited service provider who's responsible for retrying to deliver the document to the destination, as well as archiving, which is very important. So ASP, accredited service provider, has a lot of different roles and responsibilities, and this is why ministry is also so strict when it comes to selecting partners.
So
if the information is sent to accredited service provider in the format which is not the format required by Ministry of Finance, what are the options? You either reject the data and ask it to be resent in a proper manner, or you do the data transformation, right? So as your solution, your tool will transform the data into the format which would be acceptable.
Yes, so whenever we can identify the problem and we can correct it in the right way, our system will do it. So for example, take the date. Okay, if the date is in an incorrect format, which is a simple thing, right? You will put, for example, year in the beginning and day in the middle and month at the end. We can correct that and we can set it in a standard format. But if any of the required data is missing, we can't do any changes here. We have to reject the invoice and send the feedback back to the seller, and it has to be corrected before resubmitting.
So because of that, the businesses, as they're getting ready for e-invoicing, they have to assess what data will be required, what data they're already recording in the ERP, what are the gaps, and at the same time think about the format. So is the format acceptable? So you might have data, but the format of the data might be wrong. And if it's not acceptable, then you either change it within your ERP or you have an arrangement with a service provider where this data gets transformed into appropriate format before it goes to the FTA.
Correct. It's actually the right time to look into ERP systems, because companies that are using some outdated ERP systems that don't allow to gather the necessary data, they won't be able to switch into e-invoicing. So
another thing that it maybe will be clarified in the later stage by the Minister of Finance is the format in the invoicing process is the XML. However, for a PDF and printed readable formats, it's expected that the Ministry of Finance will release mandatory fields for consistency purpose and to make sure that the reliable format would be aligned with the regulations. So this is something that we are expecting some more clarification, and this is one of the expectations that we have, that they will request mandatory fields for print invoices. So even the acceptable electronic invoice is XML, but this is a lot more requirements that the Ministry of Finance is going to be released. So there's another question about will the invoicing solution have an approval flow within the organization, like prepare an approval before making the submission to the Federal Tax Authority? Kamil.
Peter,
Pete.
no. The short answer is no. I mean, you can use the solution, you can use accredited service provider. I'll give you an example. So in Verinvo, we have business validation rules, okay? Some businesses, they would like to have additional automations whenever invoice is being sent to them. And these kind of automations, they can do a lot of things. So they can help you to validate the invoice according to your own private business rules. But this doesn't mean that the document can be automatically rejected. It cannot. Once it is received, it is received. If you disagree with an invoice, you will have to issue credit note and send it back to the network. And this is the only way to make changes and amendments. You cannot just reject an invoice that came to you. However, having additional business validation rules that, for example, will help you to flag invoices directly in your ERP system, it is possible via certain accredited service providers. Like we have a system where you can configure your rules in terms of the suppliers, amounts, totals, whatever you want. And that speeds up the managing of invoices, especially if you're getting a large quantity of invoices. It definitely can help.
So yes,
So and here, if we speak also about the approval within the organization, so within the supplier, for example, in terms of does the Ministry of Finance prescribe what is the process before the information is sent to accredited service provider, then the answer is also no. So there will be no prescriptions. So whatever the current processes are for issuing invoices, for giving a go-ahead to issue invoices, that can still remain as long as then the information is sent to a accredited service provider and then goes down the chain as prescribed.
Yes, so and here that's the reason the impact assessment and review of the processes before implementing electronic invoicing is important. And the reason is because you need to assess what is your current process. What are the processes that are going to be changed because of the electronic invoicing implementation? And one normally there are a lot of business processes that need to be reviewed. For example, invoice generation, invoice approval, IT architecture is the system capable to be integrated with the service provider, data collection, and when we mean what is the data collection is when you are onboarding your clients, your customers, how is this process? What is the additional data you need to request to them? So this is a process that you need to check during the impact assessment, and cross-functional change as well, supplier and customer communication, how you're going to do it to announce that you are implementing electronic invoicing, since when, some of the, and this is the workflow of the approval, it might change. For example, if you have any rejection due to internal business rules. So how this rejection is going to happen? You will route these invoices to an exception mode, and you have to assign a specific email address, for example. Some companies in Malaysia, they announced invoicing and requirements, key information in their website. So I can share some examples in Malaysia. So they have the website, and there they announce this is the information of additional data fields that you will need to issue the electronic invoice. So there will be a lot of changes, and we are working as well with a lot of clients doing these recommendations that will be affected and it was used in other markets. So yes, the approval process, the short answer, I agree with Camille and Vlad, is no, but you need to do these changes internally as well. And how do you manage your manual invoices as well? Because you will have both.
Very good point, Diana, because one of the questions we always get asked is when clients have portals for which invoices have to be issued by suppliers. So big organizations, big groups often have it, that any supplier has to issue invoice through the portal of the customer, which is obviously not the usual process. So the question is, how would you do it in the environment when you have invoicing? Who is issuing that invoice? Where? At what point will a accredited service provider get involved? Who's accredited service provider receiving some information first, the suppliers or the recipients? So this type of questions often arise, and this is something what you need to consider and consider impact and consider what to do about it as you're preparing for invoicing.
Yes, and here as well, some of the client companies use a pro forma invoice, and this is something that in Greece as well is happening. So pro forma invoice, let's agree and approve approve this invoice before going to electronic invoice solution, before being shared with the Federal Tax Authority. So this is more a business decision on how you're going to be more effective, because at the end of the day, we start sharing everything without thinking what is your process that you need to change and the communication you need to have with your third parties. You will end up issuing a lot of invoices, issuing a lot of credit notes, and doing a lot of more manual work that you used to do before, and a lot of reconciliation. So I think this will be a nightmare. So this is where we are currently helping the clients to think about the business process. And for us, the business process that needs to be evaluated are 5: invoice generation, invoice approval, IT capabilities, data collection, and cross-functional change. That's it. So
Very nice. I think for the first time in history, we managed to answer all the questions in time. I just have one more related to currency codes and exchange rates. So the question is, can we issue invoice in a foreign currency and still comply? And yes, so the e-invoice has the currency codes and exchange rate elements as well. So the amounts are reported in the invoice currency, while VAT amounts are compounded per the rate used. So that's the short answer to that.
yes. So I think this is we managed to to cover everything. So it was a great session, great discussion. Again, it's good to keep updating with what is happening and the processes. This is crucial now to do it now. So thank you so much, Vlad and Camille. Feel free to contact us. And we are here to help you through this electronic invoicing implementation in the UAE. So thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. See you in the next episodes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.